push it. She's getting it.
Just to see you at all.
Welcome to the last talking session of our retreat. Tomorrow I'm not going to say a word in the meditation hall. You're on your own. Cut loose. You're grown-ups now. Your mother and I are very proud of you. This is the other radiant presence. But it's just real life, just like it always has been, just as it is. There are two descriptions for the same thing, two sets of words for the same thing. That's it, that's everything. Do what you like. Anyone have anything they'd like to speak about? How's it been? What's going on for you? Any stumbling blocks? Any grievances? Any?
Yeah, not enough food.
That's always the case, right? More sugar, more butter. Yeah.
So this afternoon, at the end of the discussion, briefly talking about the irrelevance of the body, and so I have that at the mental level and the level of the heart, but the level of the gut, I still believe that the body is relevant.
Sure. Operative word there is belief. So since it's at the level of the gut, it's not about thinking about it.
Right.
Since it's not at the level of the heart, it's not about that kind of approach. It's about, well, what kind of energy does the gut have? So see what the body is on that level of energy. See what it really is. See what is present on that level of energy as the body, and see if it in any sense, I don't mean logically or in thought, obviously, but just directly, see what it actually is and see if it corresponds to anything to relate to as you have a tendency to believe that you should. You know, the whole antidote to anything is just look and see what's actually there. It's that simple. And what's actually there in experience will not be what you think it is, whatever you think it is, or feel it is, or anything it is. Because, as you've probably heard me say a few times the last few days, what this is transcendental. It's infinite. It cannot be held as this or that. And you can't believe accurately that something is a certain way when it's also other ways. It's not that what you think about things is wholly untrue, it's just that it's more than that. And not just a little more. More and more and more and more forever.
Peter,
Yeah.
can you turn your output volume off or mute it?
I don't know. There's no output volume.
Jeff, maybe Jeff can do it.
There's no output volume. There's no sound coming from the speakers.
Okay, well there's echoing.
We're in an echoey room. Echo, echo, echo. every time I say.
All right.
See?
So next, the section where the section you said the body is irrelevant.
No, we were just having a discussion. We were talking about how, vaguely speaking, we were talking about how, typically we're used to identifying with our body as being important and very, very central to things, and really the highlight of our experience and our, our life and our motivations. And I was saying that if you look at your experience, you'll discover that that's an overemphasis, because if you look at what's actually present as the body, there's obviously a wealth of energy, of experience, of qualities that are present as that, but there's also an astounding richness of qualities that essentially have nothing to do with the body per se, that's also present. And so why fixate on this as being so important? In other words, we tend to overblow the importance of it. And as always, as I just said, the solution is to look and see what's actually there experientially. What experience really is what is liberating. And the only thing that prevents us from accessing that is we think it's something else. We think experience is other than it is, so we don't get to the portions of it that are liberating.
I feel more and more like the energy.
Yeah.
What I experience feels like what I am.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure, you are. That's quite reasonable.
I don't think I'm
Cool.
so the body is, I don't know, doesn't make so much sense.
Doesn't make a lot of sense. Nothing does.
And I'm not worried about it. It feels actually quite good.
Yeah.
Could you talk more about the Christmas tree?
I don't think I want to do that. I'll talk with you about that sometime. We were having a conversation this afternoon, and the discussion came up in terms of looking at things in terms of the subtle energy body and things like that, and so on and so forth, which is certainly true and relevant, but is rather specialized and not particularly important in itself. It's important to the extent to which it seems to be important to you experientially, but it's not something that is like of the essence in terms of general utility for people. And there's all these specialized aspects and traditions and paradigms and ways of approaching this that shows up in all these various spiritual and metaphysical traditions. And of course they all have varying degrees of merit, but they're, it's not like you need to categorize them all and learn them all and understand them all, unless you happen to be interested, and that's fine. But it's really not of the essence. Any system, any philosophy, any understanding, any paradigm, seeing things in terms of any paradigm, is a sideline. It's an interesting curiosity. Whereas simply what this is, just this as it is the point. Is what this is what matters, is where the power is, and it's extremely simple. It's much, much, much simpler than any of these paradigms and metaphysical schemes hold it to be. And again, not that those aren't necessarily relevant and valuable in their own terms, but they're unnecessary. They're elaborations that don't add to the core importance. What is the powerful fact is that what experience is made of, literally, physically, experientially, what it's actually made of is intrinsically transcendental. And this is seeable. And when you see this, you discover that this is a transcendental event here. And your life is not just some mundane, whatever you may think it is. It's literally a miraculous, transcendental event. And I mean that. It's literally miraculous. It's literally transcendental. And when you see that, wow, it's a different thing than, my shitty life and my problems and my family and economics and health and, it's just a different condition. And that's the true condition, and the condition in which it seems to be other than that is just not true. It doesn't actually exist. The painful, sucky world with all of its problems, turns out it doesn't exist. So why uphold it? Why live in it? Why maintain it? Why, why recreate it?
So, I'm just curious, going back, I'm trying to remember, like, getting enlightened, I'm just picturing Buddha. So, I don't exactly have an account of what this history is. But let's say when he got enlightened, he was in this very special, you know, kind of, maybe it was really this tremendous high feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that continues. Well, from what you're describing about radiance, it seems like this would be permanent and doesn't change. Well, would the
Yeah.
experience of it change?
No, the experience of it doesn't change.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily a high feeling in any simple sense. You know, elation and ecstasy and feeling high and all of that is generally a result of contrast. So, you know, in other words, when you change from one condition into another condition, it's like, oh, wow! But then when you're in that another condition a while, and then more, and then longer, and then longer, and then longer, and then longer, it becomes normalcy. And it doesn't change, but the sort of the oh wow factor or the elation factor isn't necessarily prominent or dominant. You can go to it anytime you want.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can look at your experience and you can see what it is, and when you see what it is, you can go, God, this is staggering. This is, you know, if I had seen this 20 years ago, I would have gone nuts. I did. but you know, and there is a major wow factor available, but it's not like you're always going like, you know, I have to be led around and fed and my butt wiped and stuff.
Speaking from your own experience, would you say did you ever get bored?
No,
I think it what?
boredom is no longer a condition in my reality. Because there's unending surprise, unending interesting, unending data density. The amount of information that's present in the moment is inconceivable. I mean, how can it be boring? It's like, you know, a bazillion encyclopedias and a bazillion dramas and a bazillion, you know, philosophical texts and everything are just constantly being presented just in experience, you know.
So even like having breakfast every day at the same place would not, if there's always new things to discover about it.
Not yet, but and the place isn't the same place because every time the experience of the place is different. There is no place, there's just the experience of the place. And you cannot experience the same thing twice the same way. Like, remember in the first night where we had the paper that says radiance on it, the paper is not a paper, it's an experience. And when you close your eyes, it's a different experience. When you feel it, it's a different experience. And it's not like there's a paper that's there, no, it's just the same paper. The paper is an experience. And the experience is always different. So there is no paper that's the same. So say I had breakfast at the same place every day, it's only the same place in terms of how I describe it. The experience is different. So the place is the experience, so the place is different.
Yes, sort of like what you said, looking at the wall and you see.
Yeah. So I mean, see, you're always, the only objects around you are experience. There are no things. The things are actually experience. So, you know, this glass is not a glass, it's an experience. And now it's a different experience, and now it's a different experience. So it's a different glass. You know, and yesterday was a different glass, and tomorrow there'll be a different glass. So there's no glass that's the same. There's no glass that's actually there, because there is no glass. The glass is an experience. There may or may not actually be a glass that's sitting there somehow. But since I can't know that, because all I can know is experience, the glass is experienced. That's all it can. That's all it actually. That's the actuality of the glass. The actuality of the glass in my reality is an experience, and the experience never repeats the same way.
It's
So there's
almost a little bit like seeing things at a molecular level, so
Yeah.
they're always changing.
yeah, of course.
Thanks.
Sure.
I just wanted to say probably the biggest thing that I've gotten from this, which maybe doesn't sound like much, but is like if I never saw another sparkle again, just the fact of experiencing at all is so amazing.
Yeah.
That it's mind-boggling, and it's just humbling and it's, I don't know, it's just miraculous.
Yeah, that's it. That's the point. That's the whole shooting match right there.
Well, I wanted to say, General Tony says, you know, be willing to make a fool of yourself, and I feel like I've done a rather good job this weekend. And I just wanted to apologize to the group for waving around special experience banners, which in a way is good because it's allowed me to really sort of notice the contrast. And so I did want to say I'm sorry for taking time.
Hey, we're all builders on this bus.
Yeah.
You noticed.
There's a basket of rocks coming around. Lava.
Let he among you who is without sin cast the first stone.
But anyway, thank you. I'd like to say thank you again to Pam and anybody and everybody that had anything to do with putting this together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pam. Our mistress of ceremonies.
Yeah, right.
And my gratitude for you, Peter, is just, I can't tell you.
Well, I'm glad you came.
It really feels like a very real turning point.
Sure.
Just when I needed final push.
Good. Good. Well, that's the intention. That's the point. So that's wonderful. Pop for your peso.
Huh?
I have a curiosity. It's not like I can let it go to. But I wanted to ask Luli, like, in living with you, like, when you say, like things just go on and it's not even there, or it's not real, or something, like, is that like pretty much all the time, like, like. Like if you
It's
said
well
something
all the
like,
time.
we have to go over to this house and it seems like it's going to be whatever, do you say, well, that's one perspective, but there's a million others all the time?
No, she just says my perspective's wrong. Hers is right. It's much simpler than that. There's not a million perspectives. There's her right way and any of those wrong ways you want to come up with. That's a no-brainer. It was the other way around. I can never remember. Maybe I'm the one that's right.
You determined that you were always right. Yeah.
Well, when they duke it out, I guess. Or I should say, continue to. It is a marriage, after all.
Yeah, because it was said. I think Lily said that you're always right, and so I was wondering, right in the sense of like it's endless. It doesn't exist. It's a million things. Or right?
Well, of course, that's right.
Yeah.
That's not an
What I mean.
issue.
Is that how you trumpet every situation by that, or?
No, because that has nothing to do with anything.
It's a little mundane.
Well, there is no mundane, but still, it has nothing to do with anything. I mean, this is transcendental, and where are we going to have dinner? And this is real life. It's inconceivable, infinite radiance. And what's on TV?
Can we get wheat free and chili free or not?
Peter?
Yeah.
I had quite often, especially this weekend, moments that are very poignant.
Mm-hmm.
This act of seeing or hearing,
Mm-hmm.
hearing death, hearing, where things are very poignant. Is poignancy a matter of contrast, or is that just a condition of, is that just a...
There's aspects of anything, whatever. I mean, any particular quality is not important in itself, because of course whatever it is also more in other. So poignancy is also more than poignancy, and poignancy is also other than poignancy. I mean, if it's poignant, like that.
Like, I mean, moving. I mean, it's moving. Being able to hear and see, it's moving.
Sure. It may be moving. Like that. It's not a matter of it's not moving, or deny it, or cancel it out, or fight the moving quality. It's just like, okay, it's moving. You know, but moving isn't moving. Moving is radiance. So let go. Not to counter the moving, not to cancel the moving, but to just be in radiance. Moving is radiance, of course. There's nothing but radiance. Anything that is radiance. So if it seems to be something, to any degree whatsoever, just let go. And it's radiance. Without canceling what it is. It's not like you leave a specific to go to some radiance. Just it never was anything other than radiance. So sure, it's moving, but moving is an arbitrary qualification, and it's more than that. It's moving and it's moving plus. It's moving ... You know.
It's things have significance that normally don't have significance.
Yeah, but that's completely defined into existence. Everything is infinitely significant, and or nothing has any significance whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it's radiance. Is radiance significant? It's inconceivably, profoundly, miraculously significant, and it doesn't matter at all. You know, does that make sense? No. Does radiance make sense? No. So if it's significant or not significant, that's when you're in trouble, because you're holding it to be this or that. You're holding it to be something. I mean, you may not be aware that you're holding it, but you're taking it as that, let's say. Holding maybe not be the best word. You're taking it as, your hit on it is that it is XYZ. And sure, it is XYZ, but it's more than that. And the moreness is radiance, because radiance is always more. It's inclusive of any specific quality, but it's more than that. It's that and. And you know, again, I want to remind you, this is the end of our retreat, there is no radiance. It's just this. Radiance is a kind of a trick, a kind of a metaphor to get you to look at this in a new way. And everything that I've said about radiance is absolutely true, but radiance is another subtle holding.
Flow, it resonates.
Sure.
But when you just said a little while ago that, you know, when you saw what this was 20 years ago, you went nuts or something. I could feel that, yeah, there was one experience that I had to step out and I went, ooh, that's one I don't want to, place I don't want to go or something. It, for some reason, were you having that experience of feeling nuts, or was it outside going, you're nuts? When that disorientation happened? I don't know if I classify it in those terms. I think I'd say that
I could see quite directly how inconceivably, astoundingly weird and amazing and wonderful and bizarre this is, and I didn't know what to do about that. So behaviorally, I mean, it's not like I went nuts in a sense of depression. It wasn't even hard to live. It was just, I mean, I was a stupid kid. I was 22. I just wasn't prepared for that range of orientationlessness. So I kind of behaviorally I might have thrashed around a bit or something, but because I didn't know better. I mean, I was stupid kids. Kids thrash around anyway. I mean, all kids do that. I just was doing what any kid would do. But I also saw that I was God, and it was kind of a freak out. So I mean, saying I went nuts isn't like a technical term or anything.
Yeah, no, I sense that it was that disorientation. I just wondered.
Yeah.
How to function.
Yeah. School of Hard Knocks, thrashed around. How does anyone function?
Well, orientation is actually an interesting way of talking about ground, or the thing that holds us in place and holds this kind of holding.
Yes, exactly.
And to get in touch with that, it seems like we have to get in touch with that, or see what that is, or
Yeah, it's all about discovering what orientation actually is and how it works, and the way that people typically orient ourselves, and the way more immaturely the radiance orients to itself is in terms of orientations, in terms of worldviews, in terms of interpretation, in terms of, oh, this is this and that's that, and now I've got a map of how everything works. Now I know what everything is. I'm a human being, and I live in California, and blah 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 blah. Floss every night. I mean, all those kinds of things. It's sort of a, it's a worldview that has it's semi-coherent and has all the pieces more or less related, and I know what the relationship is. And the actual condition is not like that. The actual condition is as it is. And it's not a condition of total disorientation, it's a condition that is indescribable. But any orientation, any sort of linear or semi-linear orientation you come up with, which is what we typically do when we're relatively spiritually mature, is a vast limitation of the actual condition. And the actual condition is a lot like orientationlessness. Although it's not actually that, it's orientation to the actual orientation, which is the natural condition, which is this as it actually is, which I've been calling radiant present. So being with the energy, being with the radiant presence is just simply seeing that fact, seeing the actual orientation, which from the point of view of your previous orientation seems disorienting as hell. But from the point of view of actuality, it's the true orientation. So it reorients you from insanity to actuality. So seeing the radiance and all this sort of metaphors that we've been tossing around consists of seeing the true orientation as it is in its own terms, which looks a whole lot like disorientation or orientationlessness from, say, a more normal consensus worldview perspective.
maybe with chaos within there.
Yep. And you can see my chaos. It's actually a supreme transcendental order. But it's being as this nonlinear and infinite and et cetera, it looks a whole lot like chaos from the point of view of any frame of reference that you may be familiar with.
It's actually a classical definition of chaos. That it is seemingly random, unpredictable milieu that just exists. There's no It isn't having a recognized order.
Yeah. But the operative word there is recognize.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're used to recognizing an order, but we're actually creating it and imposing it on actuality. And the actual order looks a lot like no recognizable order from the point of view of these recognizable systems. So we have to reshift our notion of recognizable, which is to recognize the actual condition as it is, i.e. be with the radiance as it is, and it becomes quite clear what it is. You can't say what it is. You can't orient to it by any constructed means, by any rational means, because it's not like that. But all of this, theoretically aside, just this in the seeing, which is direct experience, it's direct feeling. In the morning sessions, you hear me say, feel. When you feel anything, when you experience anything, what are you doing? What's happening? It's not rational. It makes no sense whatsoever. Seeing light makes no sense. It's not constructed. How do you see? Whoops! There goes the road. So just feeling experience itself is intrinsically transcendental. It makes no sense. You can't describe it. You can't say how it happens. You can't say what it is. And all of a sudden, boom! You're out of any recognizable human frame of reference that's describable. But it's actuality. This is here. This is real. But it is its own frame of reference. I mean, you could say, or a meta frame of reference, or blah, blah, blah. Who knows? You can erect any philosophy you want about it. But it is what it is, and it doesn't need to be analyzed.
Well, it feels chaotic.
Yeah, it feels chaotic. Good. But that statement is from within the context of an erroneous frame of reference. From within Newtonian physics, Einsteinian physics may feel chaotic. I don't know, if maybe, whatever. So paradigms are incompatible, but a paradigm that is truer than another paradigm is real, and the other one is just not. It's fantasy, delusion, i.e. insanity. The paradigm in which I'm Napoleon is viable. It's just not actual in most senses. In most simple senses, anyway. Actually, as a matter of fact, I am Napoleon.
I think you're a little tall. Just like you're tall.
Sneaking.
No, it's very true that I'm Napoleon, but we don't really go into that.
Privately at a
This thing about self-verification.
Yes.
Is it has this weird flip side of it, I think, that I've been aware of, that is it's like exploding too, right?
Yeah, sure, I can follow
That
that.
I've run into with
Yeah.
the phrase.
Yeah.
Like we were walking over to the book publishing tour thing, and our guide said, "So, who is this Peter Brown guy anyway? What are you guys doing here?" Right? And somebody says, "Well, it's the Yoga of Radio Forever."
Of course. Everyone knows that.
And I could feel that I could feel the already constructed definition of that I would have given me, right? That was already way down the path from when I got here, right? And that I've had to struggle with over, as we've beaten the term into submission.
Yeah.
Now when I hear somebody say chaos, I'm like, yeah, give me some chaos. I want, and your constant attempt to reorient us to experience is that inherent like self-destruction.
Yes, exactly so. Yeah.
That is sort of its beauty.
Yeah.
I mean, or its genius or whatever.
Yeah, and that's what I mean when
I lose track of it so fast.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The word that I use a lot, the transcendence or transcendent, that's what I'm referring to exactly. It's a quality that, self-destructive in the sense that it destroys any rationale, it destroys any logic, it destroys any way of holding it that, you know, or period.
View destruction.
Yeah. So to me, transcendent includes that, because whatever you're looking at is nope, more than that. But yeah, and this is, again, this is experiential. It's not something you need to do or hold. When you know how to see it, you can just look at experience and go, whoop, yeah. You know, there goes that theory. You know, it's a pretty good theory, but it doesn't quite, doesn't exactly, it's not exactly right. And you get that, what this is, you know, no theory is going to nail it. And so, and that self-evident fact is this destruction. You know, it breaks down, reality breaks down lies about it, because it gives you evidence to the contrary. Experience will give you evidence to the contrary of any theory of what it is.
Right, that's good.
Yeah. And that's its power, that's what's liberating factor. So it frees you from tripping over your own limited theories.
There's actually freedom.
Yeah. Actuality
Experience of freedom.
Yeah, actuality is freedom intrinsically. Experience is actually freedom. It's made of freedom because it's open-ended. It's not linear. It's not, you know, it's not constrained to, it doesn't have a path you have to be on. It's just, well, whatever.
It seems that radiant presence you know, all the holdings on, all of the definitions or thinking I know something, in radiant presence, it's like, it's like as far from the Earth to Mars. It's sort of like, whereas prior, those frames of reference seem to give some comfort. Now, radiant presence is once again, it's like just trying to use words to really give it justice can't do it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, this is where all the, as you say, freedom. This is where all the comfort is in no longer clinging. It's so far off the wall. It's like, oh my God, there's a whole new ball game.
It is. This is freedom. This is nourishment. This is satisfaction. This is fulfillment. This is fullness. This is lusciousness. It's extreme enjoyment, inconceivable beauty. It is all that intrinsically. And wow, I mean, it's kind of no contest, you know. But if you can see that, if you actually see the truth of that, see the actual self-verifying fact of that, you know, and it's what you are, so you don't even need to go to it. It's just a matter of, oh, yeah, how nice. How nice that it turns out to be the case. How fortunate.
It's home.
It's home. It always has been home. And so it's easy. Just recognize, oh, yeah, I get it. This is where I am. And, oh, wow, how nice. How nice. What a blessing. How nice that it happens to be that way.
Better than any drug trip, because there's no coming off it.
Yeah. It's real. Doesn't need to be maintained or protected or defended, or it's not precious or delicate or vulnerable. It's bulletproof. It's a fact. You couldn't make it otherwise if you wanted to.
It's so amazing.
It's amazing.
And to be out of it for so long, or not to value it, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. The greatest miracle, the most astounding thing is not this condition as it actually is. It's that it's possible for it to have not recognized itself for so long and so convincingly. How does that happen? How can you miss the obvious fact of what this completely explicitly is? You know, there's no answer to that one. There never will be. You know, it's the ultimate conundrum, the ultimate koan, you know, it's like,
We love
Sometimes-
misery, I guess. But
Well,
at the
you
same
know-
time, we also do know it.
of course, always, you know, because it is home, and we're always home, and we always know we're home. So that's why it's so paradoxical. That's why it's such a mind fuck to try to wrap your head around that one. How can I know this? How can I not know it? I know this. How can I not know this all my life? You know, it's like, how does that happen? It's inconceivable. It can't happen. You know, it doesn't make sense.
Sometimes I've read spiritual teachers, they say they recognized this when they were children, and then they forgot it for like 20 years or so, and then what they woke up to was what they saw when they were a child.
Oh, sure. But yeah, I mean, you know, I think that intrinsically we know this. And the universal experience of anyone I've ever heard from, and myself included, in realizing what this is always one of recognition, of like, oh, well, duh, of course. Oh, it's, you know, it's just knowing that, well, I know this. I knew this all along. You know, and yet it's a total surprise. It's a shock. You know, what this actually is. It's shocking, but at the same time, but I know this. I've always known this. How could I not know it? I know it. How could I not know it? Is the question, and it's a real valid question because there's no answer to it. It just seems to be the case that happens, strangely.
Now you said you wept from joy. I'm not quite, you know, given who I am, how this necessarily makes life good.
Which, the weeping?
No, I can see that experiencing radiant presence, then at least you're no longer preoccupied with your bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, but still might not necessarily make life good. Or I don't know, since I'm not at that. It seems like you could still.
Well,
Life still could. Life is still full of confusion, ignorance, society.
Sure, all of that.
Yeah.
But
personal history.
The way to understand that question is think of the dream analogy. You know, have you ever had a lucid dream?
Not that I'm lucid enough.
Okay, sure, that's fair enough. Anyway, in a lucid dream, you wake up within the dream, which doesn't mean you literally wake up, but you recognize it as your dream, and you go, "Wow, I'm dreaming."
In that same tone of voice?
Well, you always that exact tone of voice. And you sound like me, too.
You always sound like Peter, right?
Yeah. I do. You don't do?
Wow, I'm dreaming!
But when that happens, everything changes without needing to change. So your dream could have been whatever it seems to be, whatever the circumstances are. Dreams can be, you know, heavy-handed. Dreams can have all sorts of, so you can have problems, and you can have situations you're trying to deal with. You can have, you know, things you're trying to achieve, or whatever, right? Dreams can be problematic or difficult or challenging or downright horrific. You can be having an out-and-out nightmare where, you know, whatever, boogeyman's trying to eat you up or whatever, right? And what happens is when you go lucid in a dream, when you recognize that you're dreaming, all of a sudden you know, oh, it's just a dream. And wow, does that feel different? Because it's not that the circumstances aren't still presenting experientially. It still might look like you're in the dream. It's not like you wake up and you open your eyes and there you are in your bed and the dream's gone, poof. You know, when the hallmark of a lucid dream is you're still in the dream. The dream is your environment just as much as this is your environment now. It's your field of qualitative experience. The qualities that are presenting in terms of forms and so on are still present. But you know that it's a dream. And all of a sudden it's a dream, you don't give a shit. It's not important, it's just a dream. Yeah, sure there's these problems, but it's a dream. You know, come on, give me a break, who cares? Let the boogeyman eat me. And this is exactly analogous to realization. So realization doesn't solve problems, necessarily, per se, karmically. You know, if you're a jerk before realization, you may be a jerk after realization, or not. Or it's not in my case. I all of a sudden became completely wonderful. But so realization may not actually solve problems per se, but it removes them as problems because you get that the context is not what you thought it was. You thought the problems mattered, and you thought the problems had implications, where all they are is energy turbulence that has no implications at all because basically it's just a dream. You know, I mean, this metaphor of awakening is often used, and I don't like it. You haven't heard me use it a lot because I think it has implications that are confusing. You know, I like realizing what this is. It already is what it is, but you can recognize what it is or realize what it is. But it is awakening is an apt sort of a metaphor for it, because when you awaken, you see that it was just a dream. And how much does the dream matter? It looks like it looks. Sure, maybe it was a nightmare, but it's just a dream. So there's no implications. There's
So
no.
you're saying that this, as we're listening to you right now, is a dream.
This is what it is, and it's not literally a dream in some senses, but it is exactly a dream in the sense of your orientation to it. You're not in this. You're not in this situation. This situation is in you, in exactly the same sense that a dream is in you. In fact, that's a good way to characterize what happens when you go lucid in a dream, I think. When you're not lucid in a dream, you think you're in the dream. You think it's a world that exists and you're in it, and so therefore you're subject to what happens in it. When you go lucid, the world is still appearing, but you suddenly get that, oh no, this is in me, I'm not in this, I'm not subject to the repercussions of what happens in the dream. It's like watching a movie. You know, things can happen and the bad guy can lose and get killed by the good guys or vice versa, but who cares, it's just a movie. You know, and exactly like that with a dream, when you go lucid, you get that, oh, this is in me, I'm not in this. And if you're not in it, it can crash and burn, and you're not affected.
So our experience of listening to you right now,
Yes.
I'm trying to relate it to that.
Yes. This exactly good. What you're doing right now is happening inside of your experience. You are not within it. It's not an environment that you are a small part within. You are a vast, inconceivable, essentially transcendental field of experience, a very small part of which is your experience of seeming to sit in this room and seeming to be involved in this conversation. Literally, I mean literally and in detail, that's what it is.
You know, when I think about it, I get pretty confused.
Yeah, it's confusing as hell. Doesn't make any sense. But you can see it. You can come to know that that's the case. Again, and the way to do so, as we've been talking about, you know, from many angles the last few days, is to explore other aspects of your experience. In other words, so you're really familiar with your personality, you're familiar with circumstances, you're familiar with your problems, you're familiar with blah blah blah. That's fine, great. So check out what else is going on. You know, what's going on up here? What sort of subtle little vibes and moods are happening? What's happening when you stare into the sky? What's happening when you go to sleep? What's happening, you know, outside the box of that framework of your life and your situation and your personality, but still in your experience. So all of a sudden, you have experiential access to something that's outside the box, let's say, the frame of reference.
So instead of being 180 vision, go to 360.
Yeah, exactly. And you will discover all sorts of actual experience that does not compute or is not relevant in terms of your personal story or your personal, however your frame of reference in terms of what you are and what your situation is. And you'll discover that interpretation of what you are and what your situation is very partial. And once you let it include all this other 360, all of a sudden the implications turn out to be very different. And that's the power of this. That's why it's transcendent. Not because it cancels out normalcy. It is normalcy, actually. It's what normalcy has always been. But it's more than what you're aware normalcy is. And already is that. And so and this is noticeable and discoverable. And so that's the whole sort of, that's the whole trick of it.
That's I don't want to go down this path conceptually, but that seems like a separate issue. The radiance is one thing, and the world being in me, not the other way around, is another thing. It's one thing, and I'm not sure how to bring those. I'm not sure how to bring it together.
It's different. Well, remember I said there's infinite viewpoints on this, and no viewpoint is truer than another. So the viewpoint of, the radiance is everything is absolutely true. The viewpoint that you are everything and this is in you is also true, but it's another viewpoint of the same thing. It's another way of saying the same thing.
Well, this looks like two different things. Yeah, I'm not sure why.
Yeah. There's only one thing, so anything you say has to be that one thing. Or it's just gibberish. And that's the one thing.
Yeah, I mean, like,
It's not important. The point is you can't make sense of it. So saying everything's in you is not ultimately true. But it is a relatively true point of view that is valuable to explore, because it will lead you to discovering what is actually the case, which is beyond that point of view.
Because it seems that everything is in me is experienceable. I mean,
Sure.
Everything's
in your experience. That's obvious.
Yeah, and then the dynamism.
The dynamism is also in you, or is also you. Is also the experience.
It's not in me. It is me.
Well, the experience is intrinsically made of dynamism, and that's experienceable. You can't find any substance or quality or anything, presence whatsoever that is anything other than dynamic. Can't be found.
It just seems that the world being in me seems to fall apart at that point when everything becomes dynamic.
Cool.
Okay.
Who cares?
Okay.
And there's no world and there's no you, so ultimately it doesn't matter. But given that there's no world and no you, the world is still more in you than you are in it. The world's a subset of you, not you of it. The world's here because you are. You're the creator. You're not. It's not like the world is here and it created you. You are literally that which created the world. You are the Big Bang. And this is what it happens to look like at this moment.
It is true that sense of falling apart is part of it.
Oh, absolutely. It's intrinsic.
Yeah.
Because it transcends any paradigm. It transcends any partial view.
Which we're talking about, we call it freedom.
Yeah.
You have to, it almost has to be, otherwise it wouldn't be free.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm reading the Jed McKenna books, and I'm at the part where that he's dealing with the Captain Ahab, and he's saying, you gotta just be this madman, otherwise forget it, you'll never make it, and it seems to have a lot of personal will and sledgehammer your way through, or I don't know.
Well, it's an extreme example. What he uses Ahab to illustrate is his monomania. If you're doing anything other than orienting to the radiance, you're asking to be sidelined. You're asking to be distracted. You're asking to be, please take me away from reality. I'm a victim. I'm a patsy. Use me, seduce me into confusion. But if you're like, no, screw that. I want this. I'm going to this. I'm getting this. That's the way you get to the radiance. I mean, not necessarily by acting it out or by being a jerk or by being a maniac in any active sense, but in actuality, it's your priorities. And Ahab is an extreme example, and he obviously was a maniac behaviorally. Yeah, but the important point isn't that aspect of it. The fact that he's a raving loony.
I would say life is made via raving when we take at various points, just
Sure.
part of the process. And
Yeah.
I don't know if he's referring to that or it's single pointedness.
But it's a single pointedness. The raving loony part is just a side effect and not particularly important. It comes with though, fortunately. You get to be a raving loony. It's about priorities. If anything other than reality let me put that the other way. If reality is not the top priority, then you're going to drift off into fantasy. Because reality is the only counter to fantasy. Reality is the only counter to delusion.
Which is what we've been doing for hundreds of thousands of years.
of lifetimes, or whatever, right? Or maybe just right now. Either hundreds of thousands of countless lifetimes, or else just right now. I can't remember which. one of those, I don't know. It's a little confusing.
It's a big bang, that'll be right now.
Yeah, the Big Bang's right now. This is it.
With some perception, and that's comfortable. That's what's been straightened.
Yeah.
To realize that you're making up reality, it feels much larger than realizing when you're sleeping that you're dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so big.
Yeah, it's big. And the relative proportion isn't important because, of course, when you're dreaming, the dream is your reality. You know, when you're sucked into a dream, that dream feels like your world, and you're credulous. You brought a hook, line, and sinker. Yeah, I am here. I am in this situation. This monster is chasing me, or this guy is harassing me for whatever. I mean, whatever the dream circumstances seem to be. It feels like that is your world. Yeah, that's the world. That's where I am. And so when you go lucid, you get that. No, that's not my world. I'm outside this world. I'm bigger than that. And so again, the relative proportions of whether it's more or less is kind of a moot point. But yeah, it's all about a bigger perspective. It's not literally bigger, but in effect it's bigger. It feels bigger. Like you say, 360.
Yeah, but you say, you don't really rock it by trying to understand it.
You can't understand it. You feel it.
Yeah, okay.
You know it directly by contact. You know it by Braille.
By
Braille. You know it the way you know what temperature the bath water is when you put your hand in the water. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to analyze it.
And how you know that? That's the...
You put your hand in the water and you know, oh, a little more hot.
Right.
Or whatever. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to let me see now. Let me see if I can figure out what the temperature of this water is. You just know. Just direct, self-evident, immediate energy engagement. You know it the way you know whether you're hungry or not. You're hungry because you feel hungry. You don't have to think, gosh, do I feel hungry? What is this feeling? You know, it's not like that. It's obvious.
See, those things feel like sensations, where this feels like you can't touch it. It is something so
Sure. Yeah.
It's ungraspable.
Yeah, well, you could say that, but sensations turn out to be kind of ungraspable too when you get down to it.
Okay.
But we're used to taking sensations as obvious and mundane and simple, and so again, you know, part of a side aspect of this whole phenomena that I'm calling radiant presence yoga, etc., is discovering that even sensations aren't what they seem to be. Sensations are ungraspable and weird and bizarre too, intrinsically. Although we're used to not thinking that, we're used to not noticing that, we're used to saying, "Oh, we're just seeing, you know, it's no big deal." But that's not important. Again, that's a sideline.
Yeah.
The important point is to sort of intuit or feel or stumble on or trip over this bigger picture.
Sort of a sense of, I was talking about that earlier this morning, of that it's in me, that it's coming from me, I'm conjuring. I mean, in that sense, it is vast, and the clue is that it just seems so incredible.
Yeah.
It's just sort of unbelievable. I just can't believe it.
Yeah,
I just can't believe it.
Yeah, it's completely unbelievable when you see it.
And, you know, that expression, you know, blow my mind. I mean, that's
Yeah.
another good expression.
Yeah, it's beyond that. It's beyond blowing mind is like child's play.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, but I mean,
Well, that's nothing.
yeah.
You should have seen.
But there's just this quality. I just can't believe it.
Yeah. Oh no, it's astounding. It's absolutely astounding. In Dzogchen, there's this wonderful word which crops up again and again and again and again in the text, and it's emaho, which basically translates as amazing or wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, and the Dzogchen text will be going along saying, oh, you know, the Dharmakaya and this infinite radiance that shines from nowhere and doesn't even really exist. Wonderful. Amazing. And then just go on next line, little analysis, and astounding. And,
Yeah.
and that's what they're saying. They're saying, fuck. God damn. This is some weird shit.
I just saw this performer, you probably know her, Wah.
Yeah.
I just think it's great that she kind of like changed her name to Wah, which means bliss. Is kind of what you're saying reminds me of that. Yeah.
What a lovely building.
What are those small white dots?
That's where the UFOs monitor.
That's right. Beam.
Or maybe there's water sprinklers, I don't know which. Or both.
The other ones are water sprinklers.
Oh my
The
God.
white dots are sprinklers. The other ones are small
Fire.
dots.
They're for fire.
Oh.
The other ones are for setting the fires, and the sprinklers are putting the fires.
Putting them out. Balancing yang and yang. Yin and yang.
And also like stars.
Did we actually go over all those things we went over in that outline on Friday night?
Nope.
For 2 hours?
Nope, I skipped a few.
Yeah.
Just to keep you guessing. So you would look at the outline and say, I don't remember we covered this. I have to listen to all the recordings and, wait a minute, we covered this. Then I have to listen again and say, did we cover this? I can't remember.
Stan has a
Yeah, you have to
question.
there's 5 things he didn't cover. 5 on.
Stan's got a whole nother ass. Thank God for an eidetic memory. Yeah.
All right, let's hear about the 5 elements.
Find something you really skip.
See, someone's paying attention.
There's 5 elements.
That's right.
Peter, were you gonna, I missed that session, sorry, but, there was supposed to be a handout, I mean, 5-8 notes. For
which?
the tricks, were you gonna get out a handout?
Oh, well, that's the outline.
It's in
They're
that.
the outline has everything. Everything we've covered is touched on in the outline. I mean, obviously with
But that
it's
was
an outline
handed out in
form.
the first session?
Ish, yeah, maybe.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
okay. I have it. You good?
I got extras, and anyone that's missing that and would like it for any perverse reason, I have extras.
5 apparent elemental modes of radiance.
See, another astute one. Yes, I skipped that one.
You did.
Which one was that?
5 apparent elemental modes of radiance.
I think we've covered more than 5.
But the hyperdimensionality kind of bypasses all of that, ships into warp drive. It's interesting, but it's not. I decided it wasn't important at this point.
Okay.
Maybe we'll cover that next retreat. Maybe the next retreat will be about nothing but that. I'm going to skip all the other points. Or maybe not. I want to apologize for the typing and the capitalization in the outline notes. I don't have Adi-Da disease. I hope, but I capitalized a lot of things because I like the way it scans to read it. It sort of gave it a sort of a stuttering effect rather than just a sort of a read through it smoothly, which I kind of liked. I didn't. I used bold, I used underlining, I used capitals. I don't think I used italics. I used asterisks.
So it's not for emphasis?
Huh?
No, that was for emphasis. It's just to make it bumpy.
I don't know. It's an IQ test. And you have to grade yourself.
What did you think about Adi-Da? Of his?
I don't know much about him. I think some of his every book I've ever read of his, which is none. I've never read of his books. Let me qualify that. I have on several occasions picked up books of his and read a few pages.
Yeah.
So every book of his that I've ever skimmed, what I skimmed was exactly right on the money, and I wouldn't argue with one word of it. But evidently the guy was a psychotic asshole, and he was addicted to capitalization.
Yeah, his style of writing.
Yeah, but other than that, I'm not qualified to comment. I'm a guy named Adi-Da, Joffrey John, Bubba Free John, John Bubba, whatever else. Just I mean, there's a hierarchy of names that sort of evolved historically, I guess.
Davabas.
As his divinity kept magnificently increasing. His infinite radiance became more infinitely radiant on an ongoing basis, probably in proportion to how his revenues were increasing. I want an island in the South Pacific, guys. Okay? Come on. What you got that I don't have? Come on. Besides extreme psychosis. Yeah, I'm 17 names.
We are traditionally at the fundraising stage of a retreat.
Oh, okay, yeah. By the way, I haven't mentioned it yet. the fundraising advice for this retreat is use your money as you like it, hopefully to bring you joy and pleasure and wisdom.
Oh, I did financial sale never increase.
Oh, that's no wonder. I figured out wrong. Where's my business advisor? I'm going to fire his ass.
Well, it's kind of stupid to say, but it is remarkable how many thousands of dollars we would owe you if you were. I mean, don't tell me.
But this, no, you see, I'm adamantly opposed to the mixture of money and spirituality because it's not fair. This stuff is priceless. You would owe me billions of dollars if you were paying me what this is worth, and if you were getting it. You know, so that's just not. I just don't agree with that. So here, you know, besides, it's not mine.
But you'd be billions of dollars already in debt.
Tell me not to.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, fortunately, that's not the case. And I'm not giving you anything that's mine. This is yours. This is what this is, and I just happen to have noticed it, and I'm just saying, hey guys, by the way, you know, check this out. You know, you kind of noticed this really kind of cool thing, and check it out. You might like it too. It might be kind of neat for you. That's all. So, I mean, it'd be a hustle to sort of capitalize on it, and I just don't. It's just not my nature. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people do that. You know, Brad Pitt gets $30 billion for every movie he does a cameo in or whatever, and he's just a guy showing up having fun. You know, so it's a good scam, but that's just not me personally. I guess it's nice if you can get it, if you're motivated that way, but as I'm not.
You also told us we could take your recordings and write a book.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything I do is in the public domain. I don't own anything I say, so you can plagiarize, steal it all, write a book, and go on the circuit and get an island in the South Pacific.
I invite you to come teach there. If I understand the teaching correctly, all the money is already within me, so
Of course.
there's no issue.
Of course. It's a joke. It's like, I want $1 million dream dollars. It's like Monopoly. I have every dollar bill in the game. In fact, we consolidated 3 other game boxes, so there's 3 times as much money, and I own all of it. I own 3 Park Places. You know, I'm rich. Look, it's a game. It's not like it's money. It's not like it means anything.
Yeah.
The value in this is what it is, and that's what you can get here. That's what's available here. You know, I don't know if you recall, I said the first day that what this is like there's a treasure chamber whose door has been left open, and inside are chests full of inconceivably valuable riches, just standing open with no guards, and you're free to wander in there, and what happens next is up to you. Do what you like. You know, you can just ogle at it and walk out, or you can stuff your pockets and make it your own. You know, it's right here. It's available.
The only thing is you can't ever hold any.
Well, I mean, that's where the metaphor breaks down. It's not literally like that. It's not. Okay, there is no actual treasure chamber here. I mean, this is the disclaimer. There are no actual boxes of treasure. Everything has been said is a evocative metaphoric allusion to some condition that's entirely not like that, actually. It's all been said. Yeah, have fun.
All I want is this land.
Look at the radiance there.
You guys see the jerk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One last question, running around. I asked you this in LA when I was chatting with them about, I said maybe ask again since the dream subject came up. I asked, does it matter, or why does it matter, what a dream character does? Because, you know, if you wake up from a dream, it's irrelevant.
That's the point. It doesn't matter.
Well, maybe I misheard you at the time. I thought you said it matters, and that it was somehow purposeful or important or something what the dream character did, that it was meaningful.
It's meaningful, but it doesn't matter. Everything's profoundly meaningful, but it doesn't matter at all. It's meaningful because it displays the radiant presence in its nature. But it's not anything that is describable. You know, what the dream character does isn't really what the dream character does. Because what the dream character does is just your narration of what you're claiming the dream character is doing. What the dream character is really doing is shining, dancing, twinkling like a star. And that's what the radiance does. So that's profoundly meaningful, but it doesn't matter. Do what you like. Doesn't matter. Don't worry, be happy.
It seems that when I'm walking in nature, just going from here to the parking lot, the radiant presence is just so palpable, so obvious. But most of the time in here, whatever, it's not so noticeable, and I'm sensing that it's just a matter of kind of tuning into it more and more, getting used to it more and more. And it seems the starting point for me, it seems, is in nature. And then my sense is, undoubtedly, is going to be taken over, and then it'll be obvious.
Yeah, exactly. So all of that's right on the money. The nature of radiant presence is it's intrinsically more obvious and less obvious by its nature in various circumstances and so on from time to time, and it's just like that. So as practically speaking, in terms of what I've arbitrarily called the yoga, you take advantage of that fact by where it's easy to see it, and by seeing it, you will come to know it better. It will show you what it is. It will teach you what it is. You will become sensitized to it and familiarized with it. And the more familiar you are with it, the more sensitive you are to it, the more you will recognize that it's actually present in conditions where it is less explicit, or seemingly less explicit. It's not actually less explicit. It's just explicit in modes that you're not recognizing, say. But as long as there are modes where you are recognizing it, then that's your point of contact. In other words, do it where it's easy. Work where it's easy. You know, it's like if you want to get out of jail and you have to tunnel through the wall, and at one point the wall is only a quarter of an inch thick, and at another point the wall is 30 feet thick, where are you going to dig your tunnel? You know, so work where it's easy. So find a place in your experience where the radiant presence is most obvious, because it's easy. There's no work. There it is. and hang out there, be with that, check that out, and just sort of feel it, be with it, enjoy it, whatever. It doesn't matter what you do. If you are, recognizing and noticing it to any degree whatsoever, it will reciprocally be interpenetrating you. It will be showing you what it is. It will be teaching you. This is the true teacher. I mean, you've probably heard in various spiritual traditions the inner guru, the inner master, all the Satguru, and all this. That's what this radiant presence is. That it's pure intelligence. It's not just some light shining. It's literally pure intelligence. It's pure inconceivable intelligence. I mean, we're talking the mind of God. Okay. Literally, that's what it is. That's what that phrase, the mind of God, refers to, if anything. If it's not just complete Looney Tunes fantasy, it refers to this inconceivable inherent intelligence that the radiant presence is. So being with the radiant presence is like plugging into the mainframe. It's like all of it, you get this mega download of its intelligence. And it's not words or logic or anything that you can compute necessarily or say or even relate what it is, but it's profound. It's just profound. And that's why just being with the radiance is so transformative and so profound, because it downloads to you. It's like the aliens start beaming the secret, Encyclopedia Galactica down into your brain through the seventh chakra or whatever. Obviously that's silly, but it is, that's how it is. And so do it where it's easy. Wherever it's easy to be with this, to contact this, to sort of just resonate with this, just do that whenever it's easy, whenever it's convenient, and it'll be an accumulation for you. It'll be a reception. You'll receive something profound and meaningful that will stay with you and ultimately transform you. And then you'll tend to lose it. The mood will shift, or the circumstances will change, or whatever, and all of a sudden you'll find yourself less obviously in with radiant presence. And that's okay. Let it go. Don't cling to it. Just let it be easy. Let go, let go, let go. And sooner or later you'll find yourself again in circumstances where it's there, and then bang, tune in, hook into it, and then you'll get further download. And it's cumulative. It builds up. It's not like you get a little bit and then it drains away like charging a battery. It's a battery that retains its charge. So you get a little charge and fine, and you don't get another charge for a year, say. That's okay. The first charge is still there, and it just keeps increasing, until your cup runneth over.
It's like you're discovering yourself.
Yeah, it is. You are literally discovering yourself.
And yourself is so huge that you can't even say that.
Yes, exactly.
It's beyond categorization.
Yes.
Even to say that.
Yes.
Is.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. It's exactly that. You'd think I would have learned to pee before one of these meetings. I'll be back shortly. I don't deserve the island of South Pacific.
Yes, you do.
Okay, I'll take it.
Just put the stencil in.
Someone wants to scoop up or
No, no, no.
reach in there?
No.
No?
Yeah, yeah, the part of it, No, we're not doing the penis, so. It's squares.
Yes.
We just did the.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. What did I miss?
Read it through. Present.
There it goes again. Slip through my fingers.
Peter, would you have any interest sharing something about you and the picture of the guy on your website who you said was your teacher? Nino? Was his
Pino.
Oh, sorry.
Pino Tirola.
Yeah, would you have any? Because he's such a mysterious character.
He was very mysterious. He was a very mysterious guy. He was very. Well, he was a friend of my mother's. I met him when I was about 12-ish, 13, first time, and he was just this weird European guy, and I didn't think much about him. You know, I met him a few times in passing at parties that my parents threw or whatever. You know.
Where was he from again?
Italy. He's Italian.
Okay.
And I didn't think much of it, and anyway, over the years, I developed myself into my teenage years and late teenage years, and I started to become very interested in metaphysics and, you know, archaeology and ancient cultures and just, you know, sort of different worldviews that different humans have had in various times, you know, ancient
Where were
Egyptian
you
mythology.
growing up?
I was all over the place. You know, my home base at that time was in Miami. That's where my mother lived. But I was in boarding school some of the time, and basically at other places some of the time. So I was kind of all over the States, East Coast. And so anyway, I became interested in all these various topics and metaphysics and Western occultism, and I mean, just sort of, you know, a sort of whole smorgasbord of, you know, just sort of trying to peer beneath the surface of things, whatever. And I became aware that Pino was some kind of an archaeologist, and I thought, oh, all of a sudden he became a much more interesting figure to me, because I thought archaeology was just great. I mean, all the astounding range of human possibilities. I mean, you see what the sort of worldviews and artifacts and lifestyles that, you know, ancient cultures and other cultures lived. It's so bizarre. I mean, the ancient Egyptians or Incas or whatever. I mean, it's like, God, what were these people up to? You know, what was their world like? It's so, I mean, what a trip. And so anyway, Pino became a more interesting figure to me. And I sort of, you know, I don't remember how it happened, but I started sort of, you know, inclining towards getting to opportunity to hang out with him. I think I had my mother take me over to him, or we were invited over there, or she was invited over there, and I went along, or whatever. And and somehow we sort of got along. I mean, I was a stupid, American teenage hippie, and he was a mature Italian, European guy who's very worldly and just radically different life, radically different everything than me. But somehow there was some kind of a thing there, and he sort of took me under his wing in a sense. I mean, nothing in any sort of big way or explicit or anything like that. It was just I sort of started hanging out with him a little more. He would, and I discovered not only was he an archaeologist, he was also supposedly a psychic, and I didn't know what that meant, but it was right up my an archaeologist and a psychic. Wow, it's like sort of red lights are going off. It's like, wow, there's some potentially interesting stuff here, maybe. And so I started hanging out with him, basically when I could, which was, let's see, at that point, it was very, for years it was very sporadic. I would see him, several times a year, and just hang out with him and chat. He was not a teacher. He was not a spiritual teacher. Over about 6 years of hanging out with him with various degrees of intensity, he sort of, on maybe 7 or 8 occasions, he would give some little cryptic utterance that I didn't make any sense of, that was clearly intended as some kind of a advice or teaching or whatever, from his perspective. And it was all, for me, it was all, just completely, what was that? And I would hear these things and I'd go, what did you just say? God, that sounds so meaningful. What was that about? But anyway, so he was not a teacher, and basically spending time with him consisted of mostly sitting around his house, drinking sweet vermouth, which was his drink of choice, and smoking cigarettes, which is his smoking of choice, and listening to him tell tall tales about, not necessarily tall tales, but talk about his mostly his adventures, because he was his archaeology. He was kind of a freelance archaeologist in South America. He was very interested in Ecuador, and he had an in with the tribes. Well, I'll digress a bit. He was a bit of an adventurer, sort of by temperament or by lifestyle and by his history, certainly. So he was one of the he was a pioneer and cutting edge parachutist, for example. He designed parachutes. It's a random thing that he did. He was also one of the original frogmen. He was, during World War II, of course, he was in Italy, so he was conscripted into the Italian army, but eventually Italy fell and he immediately went over with the Allies, and once he did that, he was a frogman. He was one of the original scuba divers with Jacques Cousteau and all those people who were, sort of cutting edge, because that was scuba gear had just been invented and was trying to be exploited by the military and all, and he did that. So he was an expert and an originator of scuba techniques and things like that. So, digression over, or not over. I'll tell you the whole story. I mean, not the whole story, a whole story. So anyway, he at one point, he was, in the early 60s, he was hired by some big company to do mineral prospecting in the Amazon basin, which basically means they would fly him into a bush strip in the jungle, and he would hook up with native guides, Indians, and they would trek off into the jungle for days to specific geological sites, and he would take geological samples, hike back to the airstrip, be picked up by the plane, and deliver the samples to the States, and then then he would be repeating this, which sort of something he was doing with some regularity for a short period of time anyway. During the course of one of these expeditions, these prospecting expeditions, it involved scuba diving, because he was actually diving into pools in the Amazon basin to take these samples. He was taking them from underwater, which is where the scuba ties in. But anyway, that's sort of too much detail probably. But on one of these prospecting expeditions, he had a life-threatening accident, and he was 3 days from the landing strip, and the pilot wasn't expected back to pick them up for a week, and they had no way to contact him, and blah blah blah. So he thought, oh shit, I'm going to die. But his guide, who was just an Indian, a peon, a pickup, give him $1 a day, and he'll carry the gear and take me to the site and so on. Said, I think I can help you. And so he sent a couple of the other Indians off into the jungle to get some herbs and stuff. And they came back, and this guy made a poultice of these herbs and wrapped it up and wrapped it around the Pino's wound. And he had everyone who was there piss on it. And then he put his hands on Pino's head and started chanting some language Pino didn't understand. And Pino felt really weird. He felt very, very strange. So so Pino said, "Oh my God, I'm really screwed. I have these superstitious witch doctors peeing on my wound. I'm not going to get to civilization for a week. I'm going to lose my leg. It's going to be gangrene. I'm screwed." And so he went to so they got him back to the landing strip, and there was a hut there, a little hut. It was just that the landing strip was more or less hacked out of the jungle, and they had erected a little hut. And so the Indians put him in the hut and brewed up a concoction for him that they said was his medicine, and they left it with him. And so they said, just stay here and drink the medicine. You'll either be dead or you'll be fine. so of course, well, what choice do I have? So okay, that's what I got to wait for the plane. So he did get that. Apparently, he hung out in the shed and drank the medicine, which turned out to be ayahuasca or something. So he was basically tripping his brains out for 3 days straight. And then the plane came and picked him up and flew him to Cusco, and then he took a plane to Miami right away. He phoned his wife from Cusco and told her what plane she was on. Said, pick me up, we got to get to the emergency room right away. I'm probably going to have to lose my leg. And so she picked him up, took him to the hospital, and the doctor, his foot, his leg, he was wounded down here, and his foot had been in this pissed-on poultice in his boot without taking the boot off for a week, right? And he was just terrified to see what it was going to look like when they take it off. It's going to be all green and rotted, and they're going to have to, And so they took him to the hospital, and the doctor looked at it and said, when did you say this happened? It's almost healed. That was weird. What's up with that? And because he was, he's a modern European guy. He was, in Western paradigm. He didn't, the Indian superstitions to him were just Indian superstitions. And so that was kind of interesting to him. But then within a few weeks, more or less, he started having very, very strange experiences. And he at first thought he was going crazy. He started seeing things and hearing things, and he at one point he woke up in the middle of the night and found himself naked in his backyard, sitting in lotus position. With absolutely no experience of having got there or what he was doing there, and so on. So just for these are things that he told me, that just random things that happened, and he thought he was going nuts. He thought, oh my God, I'm really, somehow that I'm diseased from this wound and I'm going crazy and I'm going to die or get locked up or whatever. But basically, his entire experience shifted, and he had the good fortune to both have the sufficient resources internally, as well as various people who he could relate with about this, such that he was able to integrate it, and his world changed drastically. What his world seemed to be to him changed drastically. And he defined that as being psychic, because he didn't have a spiritual background, or he knew no Hinduism or Buddhism or anything at all from the East. and that this was in the sort of the early 60s, and at that point parapsychology was sort of an emerging paradigm. And so he sort of used that as his metaphor, or his framework for describing or explaining what was going on with him. So anyway, eventually his prospecting stuff fell off, and he was doing more and more. He became very interested in archaeology, and we'd get funding, and we'd go down doing basically freelance archaeological expeditions in places in the jungle that basically white people didn't go. They didn't know about. They weren't allowed there. The Indians wouldn't let him in. But he had an in with the Indians now, because he was one of the guys. He was a witch doctor all of a sudden from their point of view, because he got it. He was in their paradigm just by seduction, by brute force. Just that's what happened. So he was one of the gang. He was in with all of these Indians, and so he had sort of carte blanche and access, and they would show him all these amazing ancient sites that no Westerner had ever heard of. Just in the middle of the jungle, in the middle of nowhere. And he was strongly drawn to that and interested in it, and he did a lot of research and cataloging his results and bringing back artifacts and all kinds of stuff, discovering hitherto unknown primitive civilizations. But so I would go over to his house and hang out. And his house was like a museum. It was crammed with sort of secondhand or random sort of little display cases all over the walls and stuff. And they're just full of all of these amazing little artifacts, little ones, big ones, stones, copper, a few sort of gold things, and just this astounding artifacts of these cultures that are just, they may as well have been Martians. They're just such alien, sensibility and aesthetic to anything that, So I would go over there and hang out, and we'd drink vermouth, and he'd talk about his adventures, mostly in the jungle and in his archaeology, and drink vermouth, drink more vermouth, and somehow I always made it home. But anyway. So I was living in Miami from time to time, and when I was living in Miami at that point, I would sort of go and visit him every few weeks or whatever, and then I would be living elsewhere for a period of months or a year or something.
You
and I
would go
would
to Italy.
Huh?
You would go to Italy.
No. He lived in Miami.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I should
Okay.
clarify. He lived in Miami at that time, and the tie-in was there. And so I would sort of see him from time to time, and then over a year or months or whatever I wouldn't, and then I would see him again once in a while. But eventually, at one point in the early 70s, I moved back to Miami. And once I moved, and Pino at this point was doing what he called a weekly meditation. He called it a healing circle. And he said he had people around the world that would meditate wherever they are. I think it was Monday night at 9 o'clock. Tuesday night at 9 o'clock. Thank you. And so I was living in town, and so most Tuesdays I was available. So I just got into a regular weekly routine, a regular weekly rhythm for maybe a year or two. I don't know how long. Of every Tuesday night, I'd go over to Pino's house at 9, and we'd sit and meditate for half an hour. Then we'd hang out and drink vermouth for 2 hours while he told tales.
Just you and him, or there were other people?
Sometimes other people. His wife was always there. Sometimes my girlfriend would be there. It sort of varied. Never more than 4 or 5 people. Usually if I brought them. Sometimes other people, his acquaintances. He knew some very interesting people. He traveled in interesting circles. Interesting to me, anyway. But
he's very interesting looking.
Yeah, he's one of these. He's a larger than life kind of guy. He was an adventurer, he was a pioneer in scuba diving, and he designed the parachute that was used on the Apollo missions, and the U.S. government just took it, and he sued them and won the case because a patent infringement. He was watching the first Apollo landing, and he saw it coming down, into the ocean with his parachute. That's my parachute? What the fuck is that? So I mean, he was a really interesting guy. He was not your typical boring 9-to-5 kind of guy. He was, he was cut from a whole different mold. And his behavior was, his persona was very interesting. He was sort of larger than life. He was a little, a big energy, let's say. A big presence. He was a very sort of intelligent and accommodating guy, but his temperament, I don't know how to describe it. Anyway, it's not important. So for a period of a couple of years, more or less, I don't remember exactly, maybe a year, maybe a couple of years, I was going over there more or less weekly, hanging out. So I was spending a lot of time with him. And eventually, in 1973, I was 22, and I don't remember the exact sequence of events, but at any rate, I had I woke up one morning and had this astounding experience. Everything was different. I thought I didn't know what was happening. I thought aliens were talking to me or something. I felt like the top of my head was open and there were these presences that were talking to me or something. I mean, it was weird. It was the weirdest thing, And I thought, God, am I dizzy or have a headache? And I'd sort of wake up and expect it to go away. It didn't go away. It was like I was dreaming, but I was still awake, and the whole thing I couldn't compute. I thought, what is this? What is this? I mean, I literally thought maybe it was like aliens were trying to, talk to me or something. It was like that. It was that extreme.
What was it saying to you?
Well, it wasn't verbal.
Oh, okay.
It was sort of, I mean, I basically was. I mean, in retrospect, in terms of the way I've been putting it, in the kind of terms we've been using the last few days, I was, in contact with or aware of the radiant presence and the inherent intelligence, and it was wow. I mean, it was just major wow factor. Because it was not in any context whatsoever. I just woke up one morning and I was in this condition that was, I had never experienced anything like it before, and it was very sort of stable. I mean, it was just there. I sort of kept expecting it to go away, like, God, I'm dizzy, or I've had a brain aneurysm, or what's going on here. But it was just like that. That day was just like that, and that was what was going on. And I couldn't think about what to do. And it occurred to me, God, the person to talk to is Pino. Let me go talk to Pino. And he might have, this is sort of maybe in his realm where he could, and so I called him up and he said, oh yeah, come on over. And so, I went over to his house, and it was midday or something. And I told him what was going on. I told him very specifically what I was experiencing. He said, yeah, okay. And that was a shocker, because it's not what I was experiencing and what I described is not the kind of thing that most people would say, yeah, okay to, And then he started talking to me, started telling me about what was happening and what this was. And I can't remember exactly what he said. He didn't go on in great length or in great detail, but everything he said was, it was so obviously and precisely accurate. It was so clear that he knew exactly what he was talking about, and I knew that he knew what he was talking about, and he knew that I was getting. I mean, it was like a Vulcan mind meld or something. It was probably the most precise communication I'd ever experienced up to that point. Not because what was said was so earth-shattering or anything, but it was just absolute resonance, where I was hearing exactly what he was saying, and he was saying exactly what I was hearing, and we were both aware of that fact. And I saw as he was explaining to me what was going on with me, I saw what this actually was, and I saw this. I got it. I saw, this is the condition of reality, and I'm it. I'm not this body. I'm not this personality. I'm this inconceivable transdimensional kind of an energy. and I mean, which is pretty weird, because I'd never seen anything like that before. I mean, I sort of dabbled with those notions in the abstract and sort of spiritual readings and such, but all that was very sort of academic to me and ideas. And this was this was an experience. This was just not like that at all. It was, it was just I couldn't correlate it with anything. I couldn't correlate specifically with anything that I had previously thought or been exposed to. But again, so Pino just saw what it was, and he told me, and it was just a complete, absolute, clear meeting of minds. And we spent the afternoon together, or a few hours anyway. I hung out with him, and it was quite clear to me that he was seeing what I was seeing. He was seeing, his point of view was the point of view that I suddenly found myself precipitated into, and my point of view was the same as his. And for this period of several hours, it was just absolute. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. It was, it was total psychic communion, not in any way, sort of a bells and whistle way. I mean, it was just, we were just hanging around, and he was saying things and I was saying things. It didn't look like much from the outside, I suppose, but it was, it was. I had never experienced anything like that before. It was very profound and moving. And then he did something that was kind of interesting, just to add to my general disorientation. He took a fairly hefty piece of metal, put it between his hands like this, and he opened his hands, and the piece of metal was a different shape. And then he did it like that, and opened his hands, and the metal was back again. And that was kind of like, wow, that's interesting. And what happened? What was that? So that's another thing that happened that day. After that, I took to trying to hang out with him a little bit more. Most of which consisted, of course, of sitting around drinking vermouth while he told tales. Because he was not a teacher, per se. But from that point on, I had a very, very deep communion with him. I mean, it was not explicit. It wasn't like the behavior was any different. It was just, the way I described it to myself, and I think it's a very true description, although it's probably confusing to say, I became him. And he became me, or he already was me, or so. I don't know how to, that doesn't make any sense, but that's kind of, it's true to say that. And it felt like that to me, and it always was that. So when I was with him, it was just like I was by myself. It was like there were two of us, and only he was over there and I was over here. I mean, there was one of us, only, anyway, that's not particularly important. So, I spent more and more time with him, which was reassuring in the sense of sort of stabilizing me in, this that happened to me is genuine, and he's in it too, which I could see quite clearly, and it's genuine for him too. So it's kind of verification. It's kind of like external verification, as opposed to like I'm in this condition and no one else has a clue to what it is, and either I'm nuts or everyone else is nuts. So it was like either we're nuts and everyone else is nuts, which is a little more reassuring. It's stabilizing. It's some just sort of validation kind of thing. And then various other things progressed, but that's pretty much the meat of my relationship with Pino.
And how old were you in this?
22.
What happened to him?
He died in 1984 of a massive heart attack, probably all the smoking and drinking.
But did you? There's a long time between now and then.
Yeah.
And what happened with your life after that? You obviously didn't start doing
Sure, I'll tell you.
Groups.
I'll tell you. I'll give you the thumbnail version.
You got a complete whole deal.
Yeah. Okay, have you got 24 years?
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
Include the part where you got institution.
Yeah. Well, shortly after that, actually. When was it? Well, anyway, I don't remember. It was maybe a few months, but shortly after this whole astounding event and the subsequent, a few weeks after, a few months after, I don't remember what. It's all kind of a blur. I don't remember exactly why it happened, but I was sort of trying to live this, as a stupid 22-year-old kid would, and so I was kind of acting out, and I was telling people about this stuff, and I was going up to people and telling them, hey, you're not really a human being, you're not really in your body. And of course, people thought I was nuts, and it was strongly suggested that it might be valuable for me to check myself into some kind of a mental institution for a while, just so I could sort of relax and whatever, get some therapy and not shock treatments or anything extreme. I wasn't violent or anything, but I was behaving in a way that was most people didn't consider normal. So I did that. I said, because I was feeling bulletproof, I thought, yeah, okay, I don't care. That's more radiant presence, in mental institutions. So I did that. I was there for about 5 weeks. I finally sort of got bored with being there and figured out, oh gosh, if I keep a lower profile, everyone will say, oh well, he had a psychotic break and now he's doing a lot better. We're really optimistic, We recommend you continue therapy and straighten out. But basically nothing changed. I just was putting a lid on it behaviorally. And so for the next 24 years. The next 24 years, I was in this condition. Basically, Pino, my personal theory is deliberately he alienated himself from me. He told me he didn't approve of the girl I wanted to marry, who I did marry, who's sitting right over there. And of course, that pissed me off, and I said, "Screw you." But which I think he did deliberately because he could see I was really sort of being dependent upon him, and he was sort of kicking me out of the nest. But so there I was out, got married, living my life, 23, clueless, stupid, rock musician, taking drugs, hippie, experiencing an entirely weird paradigm from the people around me. And I was basically in that context trying to, okay, so this is the game, how do I play it? What do I do? What's going on here? And so for the next, 24 years, I basically tried to correlate this condition that I was living with the world I found myself in, the world of people, the world of life, the world of socializing and doing activities and being successful or failing or whatever, just living a life. We got married. We had kids. I raised kids. We moved out here. I'm not in that order actually, but and then in February, I think I already talked about this, didn't I? Or was that just with a few people? Anyway, in February of 1974, all of a sudden, everything clicked for me.
Everything what?
Sorry? Everything clicked for me.
1994.
1994, yeah. And I was sitting in my living room one day in this February, sitting in a rocking chair, and I was thinking about Satchidananda. And it was just sort of a puzzle, because during this 24 years I'd been doing endless spiritual study, just trying to see, because here's this astounding reality, this actuality, this experience that I experienced, with no sort of, aside from Pino, basically no external validation. There was all kinds of external, metaphysical and spiritual and stuff out there, but none of it that I encountered really lined up with what I was experiencing. So I thought, what are they talking about? They're not talking about this. They're talking about something else. It may somehow be obliquely related to this, but it just is too much of a mismatch. I couldn't make sense of it. But I sort of ravenously was just exploring basically all sort of spiritual and magical and metaphysical and whatever kinds of traditions I could stumble onto, just in the hopes of finding something that would correlate with this, because again, just to sort of not so much get validation as maybe get some clues or some integration that, gosh, there are other people who actually work with, or who actually function with this as it is, and basically I didn't find a whole lot. I mean, obviously there's a lot of hints in a lot of spiritual traditions that were like, wait a minute, there's some, yes, that's close, but then there would be all this other garbage, like you read a book and there's 4 or 5 sentences which are really luminous and right on the money, and then there's this other garbage about what color clothes you're supposed to wear or something. I'm like, what? Or whatever. So anyway, this sort of went on more or less for 24 years, and I was maturing, which was in itself a rather helpful thing. I was no longer a stupid 22-year-old kid. I was a slightly less stupid, 40-something adult. And so I was sitting there in my living room this one February, and I was thinking about Satchidananda, because that felt profound to me. The Vedas say that Satchidananda is an ultimate truth. They say that the nature of reality is Satchidananda. And I thought, cool, that's a nice assertion. And it had some resonance for me. I thought, gosh, yeah, there's something there. And so this was the sort of thing I played with over a period of time. I mean, over many years, off and on kind of thing, just, because obviously I was exposed to the formula of Satchidananda, 20 years previously or whatever. So anyway, I was sitting thinking about this. Satchidananda is usually translated being, consciousness, bliss. And so I thought, okay, that sounds pretty comprehensive, but I don't really understand it. Being I get. Okay, being, undeniable, self-evident. Duh, there's being. Okay, cool. So being, let's say that's an absolute, sure, okay, and it's an actuality, so check, 1/3 of the equation solved. Consciousness, yeah, I get that. There's consciousness or intelligence or whatever, or something that functions as if it was that. So again, that's evidently the case, In other words, reality is being experienced through a potency that looks as if it's an experiencing potency. Whatever, right? So that sort of fills the consciousness. So being and consciousness are fine. But then I was, bliss! What is this bliss? I was like, and I thought, I was looking at my experience, looking at this actuality and picturing bliss or something, whatever. And what? Bliss? What is that? And on this one day in February, I saw what the word was a mistranslation of, and a much better translation of Ananda is life force, or radiance, or energy. And all of a sudden, check, yeah, all 3 things, and it's comprehensive. Being is an actuality; it's undeniable, self-verifying. Consciousness, well, yeah, this is functioning as if it was being experienced, so that's sort of subsumes the whole consciousness axis. And energy, and bang, everything. All of a sudden, everything clearly is that. Everything's energy. From a physicist's point of view, from a metaphysicist's point of view, whether you call it quantum energy, you call it Shakti, is a moot point. It's just a matter of translation of your terms and adjusting a few of your spins. So that, and so when I saw that, basically that served as a catalyst for everything to just completely click and integrate for me, more or less instantly. Obviously, I guess I had done my homework over the preceding 24 years or whatever in terms of building up a sufficient basis or background for that to gel, and it did. And over the subsequent weeks from that particular event, because it was sort of a non-event, I sort of sat there, Ananda's the energy, the Shakti, and the liveliness, the life force. And gosh, that's pretty much it. It's just a bad translation. And it is blissful in a way, but bliss is not a good translation. Bliss doesn't really define it or indicate it very accurately. The life force is intrinsically blissful. Energy is intrinsically blissful, but it's not. But saying it's bliss is kind of more, it's kind of looking at a sideline than looking at the essence of what it is. Well, anyway, this was my particular rationale and so on, and it was a meaningful insight for me, and it worked. So this is kind of a non-event, and I sat and thought, yeah, there you go, being consciousness bliss. And I looked, over a few days. I looked. Is there anything whatsoever that doesn't fit in that? I couldn't find it. Everything. It's a black hole. It's everything. Everything is exactly this. Is that? That description actually, the Vedas was right. That is the absolute reality. And so, anyway, so over the next few weeks, I kind of was bemused. I kind of was like, yeah, interesting. Because it wasn't a huge shift for me, but there was a kind of a relief or a release of kind of like having finished something, having accomplished something, having sort of finished a race, having crossed the finish line. I mean, nothing changed. My life was going on. I was doing the same things I was doing, and so on and so forth. But over the next few weeks and years, I just sort of progressively realized the profundity or let's say I settled into the profundity of the fullness of that sort of a completeness or revelation or whatever. That's pretty much that. A few years later, I happened to be a tarot expert just because one of my obsessions over the decades has been the tarot. So I was teaching a class on tarot just because I love it, and some people asked me to. And I thought, okay, that's be an interesting experiment. I'll teach a class on tarot. So, but as I was doing it, I noticed, gosh, there was all this stuff coming in. I was just, all these correlations were just popping out, and sort of the tarot just became a jumping off point for all of this sort of free associated stuff that was really clicking. It was really sort of profound and interesting. And people who were attending the class, some of them were getting that. Some of them were going, wow, this is really something interesting here. And so that spun off into doing more sort of open-ended spiritual talks, which spun off into doing the kind of thing we're doing here. End of story.
So from studying with Pino, did you study with anyone else or it's just
no?
Text
And I
books?
No. Yeah. No. I mean, I did some Buddhist meditation for a while. I did, I saw Swami Muktananda, but mostly was reading books and stuff. Yeah. And whatever. I didn't study with Pino. It's just not like that. I mean, in fact, there was an interesting topic yesterday about the necessity of a teacher, and also actually in the same conversation, it was a topic about trying to get an accurate map or an accurate pattern of how to proceed and so on. Yeah. And Pino, my relationship with Pino is a very good illustration, because in that context, in my experience, the teacher was the method. And it wasn't a method. The method was to hang out and drink to be in this guy's presence and talk about bullshit, talk about stories of his adventures in the jungle, basically, and drink. So that was the practice. But the real practice was just being around him. And somehow he just sort of directly seeing, being around him, I came to know him. I came to tune into him, to somehow resonate with where he was at, and that was the path for me, essentially. And I didn't even realize it at the time. I mean, I kind of did. I knew there was something special there, but basically we were going to this meditation every Tuesday night and then hanging out and drinking, and so I liked it. It was great. It was cool. It felt good. It felt right. And I didn't know at the time, really, until afterwards, what was happening. But it clearly was that association that was my path. And it was a completely non-path. I mean, it was just hanging out with this strange guy who was, 40 years older than me and from a totally different world. I mean, the whole thing was such a mismatch. But somehow he liked me. somehow we hung out together. He let me hang out with him, even though I was a stupid American kid, and blah blah blah. So if I say, so my spiritual path, the path that led to me to realization, is hanging out with this guy, then in that context, is a teacher essential? In my experience, absolutely. The teacher is the path. And so I totally understand Guru Yoga and all these things. But not as a formality or an aspiration, just the fact that seeing someone who understands reality is you get to see what it looks like. You get that directly without needing to understand it or figure it out or describe it or or write a thesis or something. And that sort of also addresses the whole issue of a map. Well, how can you map that out? What was the map? What was my map? What was my practice? What was my practice plan? What were the stages of my practice? It just doesn't. It just drink a glass of vermouth, pour another one and drink it, until you feel tipsy, and then to have another one because you're young and stupid, but make it home anyway, and hang out with this guy, and that's not much of a map,
Actually, it does remind me of this. There's this teaching called something like the 3 strikes of Garen Dorje.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Confidence in the view. And I think the third is abide in the view.
Yeah, basically, Pino taught me Dzogchen. He didn't know what he was doing, and I didn't know what he was doing, and he never heard of Dzogchen, I'm sure. He never heard of it now, but he's been dead for years, so what? And exactly, yeah, it's about the view, and the view is not a tangible thing. The view is the view. I heard a really great, and extremely accurate statement from this guy Suryadas. You heard of Suryadas?
Yeah.
Anyway, he said something. Or he said several times. I've heard him say something. This formula is just beautiful. It's a wonderful pun. He said, Dzogchen can't be taught, but it can be caught. And from my experience, that's right on the money.
That's interesting.
Because it doesn't make any sense. It's not like, you can study it, but it's kind of a Trojan horse, because what you're studying isn't the Dzogchen. And you may even get Dzogchen from studying it, but still it's a Trojan horse, because what you're studying is not Dzogchen. Dzogchen is inconceivable. But it can be caught. You can catch it. And I know that for a fact, because that's exactly what happened in my relationship with Pino.
Did his cryptic comments, did they play on your,
Oh yeah, oh no, he would plant these seeds. I can't describe what my relationship and talking with him was like, because it was so non-linear. You have to, a part of it is he communicated like a caricature. The way he talked was like a Walt Disney caricature of an Italian. He sort of talks like this a little bit. That's totally inaccurate, but it's that kind of, almost that extreme. So it was very funny. Everything about it was just, what is this situation? What's going on? This doesn't make any sense. And so he would say these things. Let me try to think if I can remember one he said at one point. Oh yeah, he said at one point. I remember he said to me something very specific. He said, "When your mind spins around, see your pattern in light right here." And he went like that. And I thought, oh, okay, that sounds really good. What's my pattern in light?
Pattern of light.
No, he said my pattern. He said when your mind. These are the exact words he said. When your mind spins around, see your pattern in light right here.
It's an open eye or a closed eye.
I don't know. He said those words, and then he went on and reported another vermouth or whatever. He said things like that on maybe, aside from the one afternoon where I hung out with him specifically on that big day in my life. He maybe 6 or 7 times over the course of 5 years, every now and then he would say something like that. No context, no explanation, move on, pour another vermouth, more stories. And so, okay, so when my mind spins around, and so that's sort of for decades that was a koan for me, and now I know exactly what he means. You know, I wouldn't put it that way, but
What does it mean?
huh?
What does it mean?
Literally like, but
How would you put it?
It shows the radiance, which is more general.
When did you start
So we've
to
experienced
teach
it.
radiance?
Well, I never taught radiance. I kind of made it up as radiance for this particular retreat.
Well, I mean, you start to, share the essence.
Oh, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, explicitly anyway, yeah.
You said one time when you were in the Satchidananda phase that you described where it clicked for you,
Yeah.
that actually that was the sense of the sort of nagging sense of the separate self finally didn't dissolve, but that kind of, you said, I think the words you used there was sort of...
Well, it wasn't separate self per se. It was more that there were all these factors, and they were all here, and they were all kind of floating around, and I could see that, yeah, there's this, there's the personality, there's life, there's transcendence, there's this, there's that, and they were all kind of here and sort of floating around, and like, but it was like, this is like, I've got the pieces of the puzzle sitting on the table, but they're just sort of sitting there, and the whole Satchidananda thing was all of a sudden the pieces just went shh, and they glued together, and it was just, I saw that they were just aspects of each other. I mean, basically in the context catalyzed in my particular case by my sort of koan work with this phrase, or however you want to characterize it. So it's not so much the self as so much as there were just all of these factors that were more or less clear and more or less present and explicit, but they were just like, they were disconnected. They didn't have, it's like, how does that, how does, having to go to the mall and put up with jerks fit in with transcendence, fit in with psychology, fit in with, psychic phenomena, fit in, I'm just whatever. I mean, I don't know, it's absurd to characterize it, just sort of making up an example. So there was all these sort of things just sort of floating around nebulously in my awareness, vaguely and not explicitly, and just all went shh. And that they integrated. I found integration is what it is. There was no new element added to the stew. It just gelled all of a sudden. And that's that. And the gelling I saw was actual and it's, permanent. Or let's say it's intrinsic, so it can't not be permanent. It's the actual gelling that is, rather than some gelling that was created. So anyway, that's a long story long. And it's wholly irrelevant to anything. Totally in the nature of an aside. That's under the category of meet your retreat facilitator. Hi, I'm Peter, and this is my story.
Campfire story.
Yeah.
Right.
Never can tell.
An adventure story.
Well, yeah, certainly for me it was an adventure story.
Well, it's interesting also from a luck grace point of view.
Yeah,
because
totally.
You have like the whole Pinot angle
Yeah.
and the fortuitousness of him being there when you had
Oh,
your experience,
completely.
and then also this whole, so we just call it integration.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you picture like all the energies of everybody here on each of our storylines and all the people we know, right? That's a lot of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And sure,
Yeah.
some of them click.
Yeah, no,
Totally makes
yeah,
sense.
it was astounding. I mean, it's inconceivable fortune. It's just my great, I mean, this is what I have wept about many times. It's my incredible good fortune that my life should have been that, and I should have been who I was with my inclinations, and I should have been at that point in my life. Pino came into my life, and he was there, and it worked. It was magic. It was a magical synchronicity. No logic, no rhyme or reason. It was like that. And wow, what can I say? So it couldn't be more grace than I mean, it's luck, it's magic, it's coincidence, it's random, it's chance, it's grace, it's whatever. I mean, you can put any adjective you want on it, but it's a coming together that is uncontrivable and unanalyzable and actual. And that's why, talking about a path or a plan is like, it's not really like that. I mean, you can do that and you can work with that, and it's not necessarily wholly meaningless, but that's not really where the rubber meets the road. It's just when somehow things click, because they click, not because you figured out how to make them click, but you just happen to find yourself, wow, you're in the right place at the right time and the right thing, and how did that happen? Oh, I don't know. And that's where the magic happened, in my experience. So I'm not a big advocate of sort of plans and overviews and paths and stages of the path, and first you do this practice and then you do this practice kind of thing. Maybe, because in my experience that wasn't I can't personally verify that at all. That wasn't my experience in the least, even remotely. But I can't completely gainsay it. I can't say that if you do that, you definitely won't find realization. Maybe you'll do that and you will find realization. But my opinion, and again I can't say it authoritatively because it's not my experience, my opinion is that anyone that does those paths and does find realization, ultimately the finding of realization is still due to some confluence of events rather than due to the path. So, so basically the spiritual path consists of get lucky. The spiritual path consists of, have good luck.
But he had to be there for that to happen.
For me, oh yeah, absolutely. That's the luck. The luck is that he was there.
But the only reason we know that is because he was.
Of course. It doesn't make any sense. You can't prove it. You can't verify it.
Yeah. So you can't actually say he had to be there.
No.
And you can say he was there.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole thing is inscrutable. It's not provable. It's not demonstrable. It just was. That was the way it was. That was what happened, and that's all really I can say about that.
But if he was you,
yeah.
Where's the luck?
Oh, it's lucky that he was me.
But we already discovered that.
Yeah.
We discovered that, so it's like...
I don't know if I discovered it or if it happened. I don't know if I discovered it or something strange happened.
That's happened to, so it's like, I've experienced that a lot with a lot of people, so it's like, but then it seems...
No, this is different. I know what you mean, and this is a different category entirely.
It sounds like it's more in depth, or it had more facets to it. I can't really say anything articulate about that, but it's different. Yeah, it's not the same. Better not to know.
I mean, when I say I feel like I became him. I literally became him, and I can't, and that's gibberish, and I can't describe or elucidate that any further than that. But it's a true saying, and that's that. And it's different. It's not the same as you're me, and I know it, and here we are. It's a whole different category, and I don't know why. I can't describe why that's so, but I can say that for me it is, and I think that's true.
U.G. Krishnamurti talked about how he went to this nightclub and they were doing an act on stage, and he was like totally lost because he experienced himself as every one of those characters on stage.
Yeah.
And he had a number of different, revelations like that.
Yeah. Sure.
My intuition tells me that that's true for all of us.
Right.
At the time, it's just
absolutely. But my experience with Pino was a different category. That's what I'm saying. I get, and that's actually relatively easy to see. But what happened with Pino was absolutely unique between Pino and me, in terms of my receiving of it.
I think it's interesting if your realizations happened outside of tradition, and most of us have come out of traditions.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't happen outside of tradition, just tradition is irrelevant. Tradition can be there or not. I mean, I'm in the tradition of Western culture. I'm in the tradition of being an American male. I'm in all kinds of traditions. I'm in the tradition of being a Californian. I'm in the tradition of being, an anarchistic Democrat. There's all sorts of traditions that I'm technically a member of. So this is in the midst of tradition. And maybe I'd be a Tibetan Buddhist, and that's still another tradition, just like the other ones. But that's not what it's about. That's not. I mean, what I have to say, what I can say authoritatively, that's not the point. That's not where the rubber meets the road. It's not about that. It's about it's very personal, and personal isn't something that gets engineered by tradition.
And you've been teaching for 5 years?
I don't know, maybe something like 5 or 6 years, maybe. I mean, in the formal sense of doing things like this, is that right? I have no idea. Something like that, not real long. I mean, I would sort of talk to people and annoy them sometimes, I suppose. And every now and then someone would be really interested. And I think the tarot class must have been about 6 years ago. That was probably the first official teaching where I was sort of sitting in the front of a room and a bunch of other people were sitting there listening to my words. Maybe, I don't know. 6 years ago.
When you're talking about it being personal, ultimately it is personal, but when people put themselves in traditions, it's almost like trying to not be personal. So you were unself-consciously personal, which is harder to do in a tradition. Because you didn't know what was happening.
I don't advocate traditions because, again, I think traditions are liable to be a distraction. You're liable to get caught up in doing the tradition and miss the point. Whereas if you're outside of a tradition, you're being thrown more on. It's harder. You're being thrown more on your resources. You're being forced to be real. Be what you are. Be what you are, rather than fit into the tradition. Be what you're supposed to be, which is a big distraction. Well, whether or not it's less self-conscious, it's at least. It's a kind of a constant reality check, as opposed to the sort of the support and bomb of, well, everyone else is doing it and I'm doing it just like they are, so it must be right. It's more like, well, here I am and I'm living my life and what the fuck's happening? Is it working or not? I don't know. God, what am I going to do tomorrow? I don't know. So that it keeps you honest. Keep it real. Keep it real.
It sounds like it's like a Christian mystery of communion, like between Jesus and the disciples.
Yes.
That's like what really happens.
Yeah.
What really happens as opposed to.
I felt like Pino was John the Baptist and I was Jesus. That may have something to do with why I ended up in the mental institution. I stopped saying things like that for a long time. I just said at the end, oh my God, there are only men in white coats around me.
And you are more like Jesus because you've ended up with a group of students, which is equivalent to, that's just another name for disciples in the Catholic.
It's whatever it is. It's whatever it is. Anyway, it's starting to get a little late, and I, for one, am toasted. I've kind of been on for a while now, a little more than my usual workload. Although I'm doing great and fine, and so I want to. I expect I'll probably see most of you soon again, or later again, and so I'll see you when I do. And if any of you I'm not going to see again, I hope you have a wonderful life. And
aren't we doing tomorrow morning?
Well, yeah, I'm getting there. And tomorrow morning, this is the end of our talks, because tomorrow morning I'm not going to say a word from 9 to 10:30. I will be in the meditation room, and you are, of course, advised to do what you like, and it doesn't matter. And this is the yoga of radiant presence.
Right. So can I have a help? Yeah. With the chairs, moving the chairs.